Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So in the previous episode, I went ahead and built the new merge collector for the Red Demon's new manifold. And in this episode, we're going to make as much progress as possible on the manifold, maybe finish it, maybe not, but we'll see how it goes as the video progresses. In the intro montage, I built the new exhaust manifold fixture. So this fixture is based upon the old turbine flange and head flange location from the original manifold that they sent me right here. And what we're doing, if you guys haven't seen the previous episode or haven't kept up to date on this project, we are building a 1-to-1 scale replica of this manifold just out of different materials and with a slightly different design. So now that the fixture is completed, and a few little points about the fixture design for this, you can see I have two 8th NPT ports right here that currently have quick disconnect fittings for my back purge setup. So this hose right here will latch onto either of those fittings and allow me to purge either half of this twin squirrel manifold. And in going along with the back purge assembly and back purge setup on this fixture, on the head flange plate, you can see 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the bleed holes for the argon gas that will be flowing through this as I'm in the process of doing all the finish welding. We'll go over back purging more at that point in time, but keep that as a note in your head so that way when I'm talking about it, it makes a little bit more sense. So now that the fixture is completed and the merge collector is installed onto it, we need to put the head flange on next. But prior to doing that, I want to clean up the head flange a little bit. Now, if I get out of the direct sunlight, you can see that there are some really nice tooling marks on this, but the head flange is a little bit dirty, and that is a probably combination of the machining process, coolant being on it, and then people handling it with their bare hands. So what I like to do is to come over into the fab room over here, and I like to surface prep nice flanges like this prior to them actually going into service. So what I use for surface prep on flanges like this or any flat pieces is this guy right here. What this is a Bauer from Harbor Freight surface finishing tool. Essentially, it's a rolling drum right here that you can move back and forth across the surface of a flange or anything along those lines, and either remove mill scale, something along those lines, or in this case, we're going to take off all of the kind of grit and grime off of the face of this flange, shine it up, and get it ready to go into service. In an actual empirical performative sense, this has really no benefit or detriment to the overall function of the manifold, but if you're building a nice part, then it serves you well to have a nice surface finish associated with that. So again, if you take the flange and hold it up to you guys right here, you can see kind of the cloudiness in the center section, and it's kind of that way across the entire thing. And by the time that I'm done with this surface prep process, that will all be gone, and this will be nice, shiny, and ready to go in the fixture. And now, after a really quick scrubbing with the surface finishing tool, and I just used a red Scotch-Brite pad on it, a red Scotch-Brite drum. It's the least abrasive of all of them. You can see no more cloudiness, no more grit and grime on the surface of the flange. This thing is clean and beautiful, and it's ready to go in the fixture and ready to become a very critical and crucial part of this exhaust manifold. With all of our initial prep work done, it's now time to figure out how we're going to build this manifold. So obviously we have 4 pipes that need to make it from the head flange up to the collector. And being that I have the original manifold right in front of me, I can fairly easily break down what materials they used, what bends, so on and so forth, and make this as close to a scale replica as I possibly can. So in looking at this, it's a little bit, I have a couple different options for the order of operations of how I can build this. Now I have 1, 2, and 3 that can kind of stand on their own, but this primary right here, since it goes in between the other ones, well, I need to be cognizant of that as I'm building the other 3 pipes. So that way I don't build myself into a corner where I can't run this pipe through here, or where I can't fit anything else where it needs to go. So I think what I'm going to do is to start with this pipe right here, as everything else kind of hedges around where that is located. Once I can get that squared away, get that located in that pipe good, then the other 3 should just kind of fall into place where they need to be around this pipe right here. And looking at the design of this manifold, it's really pretty simple. We have bend, straight, bend, bend, straight, bend, bend, straight, bend, straight, bend, bend. So it's about as simple as you could possibly make a manifold, and that by no means is a bad thing. And it makes my job quite a bit easier rather than trying to build something elaborate and swooping around, or pipes swooping around each other and so on and so forth. So let's get started and build this pipe right here, and then we can figure out which of the remaining 3 need to be the next in succession and get them all knocked out.
Let's go.
We're on to day number 2, building the Red Demon's new manifold. And this is where I ended up yesterday. So we have 2 of the primaries completed, 2 left to go. But I'm going to do a little bit of modification to this primary right here. Now you can see I have quite a bit of clearance from this pipe down to this one. But on this top side here, if I put a sliver of a bend or a piece of a bend onto it, I'm running into clearance issues for this port on the collector to where it needs to run down to this port on the head flange. So what I'm going to do is to break the tacks on the collector and then the little one that I put on the head flange. And I'm going to rotate this primary down. I'll take a little bit of a grind out of this side of this bend right here. And I think that should provide me with the clearance that I need for this primary, and I think everything should be good from there. Worst case, I'll break this all apart. I can put a little bit less of a bend on this section right here. But I think just doing a little bit of grinding will be the solution to this, the solution for it, and that's by far the easiest way to do this. So let's go ahead and knock that out, and then we can knock out the remaining 2 primaries and get this thing ready for primary welding and then final assembly. So I went ahead and modified this primary right here, got us additional clearance to this port on the collector right here, and this third primary I believe has essentially just fallen together. So I have 2 bends and then a section of straight right here that I'm just using for mock-up, but I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see from the angle that you are at, but that to me looks pretty darn close to how this primary needs to be constructed. Obviously, the straight section is not long enough, but that's easy enough to figure out. You can hold these 2 up something like that, measure out the gap in between them, cut a piece of straight to suit, and then the third primary will be fabbed at that point in time, and that leaves us just the 4th one to go. So this thing's coming together very nicely. And this design makes it very easy to make this clean, make it look nice and everything. And that's about that. So let's go ahead and knock out the 3rd primary, then the 4th, and then before we know it, it'll be time to break all this apart, weld these pipes together, and then do our final assembly. And just like that, the Red Demon's new exhaust manifold is all fabricated and ready for finish welding. So I'm pretty happy with the way that this came out, and everything is nice and very similar to the old manifold, minus a couple little revisions. Like I talked about in the collector video, I changed up the angles that the collector has sit at, so everything leans back a little bit to hopefully alleviate this primary here contacting the core support, which is an issue that I recall them having with this old manifold when I built the first one that I built for them. In addition to that, really the only other big change here was eliminating this little section of straight. I don't know exactly why they had this on this manifold, but we don't need that, so I removed it on this one. I think it makes it look a little bit cleaner, and it's one less weld to do as I go through and do the finish welding on this. So with that in mind, we are at the point now when I can do all of the actual welding on this manifold. So the only thing that I need to do is mark out my initial starting points for each one of the welds. One thing that I really like to do when I'm building manifolds like this is to hide that initial start-stop point. So that way the welds look like one continuous weld the whole way around the circumference of each of these joints. And to do that, I'd first figure out what the top side or the visible side is going to be. This one's pretty easy since this is the top side right here. So on the bottom side, I'll take a permanent marker and mark each one of the joints where I'm going to do the initial, strike the initial arc on all of them. And then at that point, it's just simply a matter of welding all of the joints together, and then we'll see how everything fits afterwards and get ready for our final assembly. Yesterday's welding session on the Red Demon's new manifold went very well. I'm very happy with the end result. And now that the 4 primaries are welded, the next order of business is to take them and weld them into the manifold assembly. So similarly to building the primaries, the final assembly, there is a distinct order of operations that I need to adhere to, otherwise I could put myself in a real bind. So this first primary right here, if I roughly put it in place, you can see that it would make this weld on this port, as well as this port right here, very difficult if I would weld that primary into the assembly first. So that primary needs to be welded last, and I think it should be all right. It won't be the end of the world trying to fit the torch around and in here, and hopefully I don't eat my words in saying that. But point being, that primary is the last one that will go in the assembly, and I need to figure out kind of shooter's choice as to which goes first, second, third, and then finally this one fourth. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start welding this thing together, and hopefully I don't eat my words, but with any luck, by the end of the day, this manifold will be all welded together. on to the final day of work on the Red Demon's new exhaust manifold. So yesterday, I got everything welded together. The whole manifold's welded, aside from a couple little odds and ends, which we'll knock out today. But the primaries are welded to head flange, welded to collector. Everything came out nicely. And we're going to start today by knocking out the EGT bungs. So, individual EGT sensors, if you guys are not familiar with them, they allow you to sample exhaust gas temperature on each individual primary, which can have a direct correlation to how the engine is operating. How rich, how lean, engine conditions, things along those lines. It's good data to have, and on a car like the Demon, it is crucial information, crucial data, so they can keep pushing this car harder and harder. So I have the old manifold right here, and I'm going to use it to measure from the head flange up to the center line of each one of these EGT bungs. So that way I can maybe take an average of the distances or measure out a couple of them and match out that distance for each of them. So that way these bungs can be equidistant from the head flange and therefore the cylinder head, the port, everything else. And the more equidistant that these things are from the head flange, the more equal sampling that you'll have of the temperatures and then therefore of that data that I talked about a few moments ago. So all that being said, it sounds more complicated than it actually is. I'm literally just measuring from point A to point B and then replicating it 3 more times. So let's go ahead and get to that, get the holes drilled, get everything welded in, and then we'll be on to the easy things to wrap up this manifold and wrap up this video. And just like that, another manifold is built and another project is completed. So I could not be happier with the way that this manifold has came out. It looks very nice. I'm happy with all the weld quality. I'm happy with the whole thing. And I hope that Boostin is as well, the crew over there. And I hope that they take this thing very, very fast. So another quick once over before we wrap this up. This manifold is a stainless flanged 321 stainless T4 twin scroll manifold. It has individual EGT bungs on the bottom side there. It has twin TurboSmart 40mm wastegate provisioning, as well as a number 4 AN bung right here for exhaust back pressure. The whole thing was back purged. The whole thing was welded to pretty much the best of my abilities, and it should hold up well and stand the test of time for whatever abuse they can put it through. One little trick that I did use with this manifold, that if you guys caught it in the first episode, I made a little bit of mention to it without being incredibly specific about it, but all of the primaries are all Schedule 5 321 stainless, whereas the collector is Schedule 10 321 stainless. So the reason I did that is the collector is going to be the area of highest stress and highest pressure, especially during the very violent anti-lag events this car is known for. So in thickening the material that I used for the collector as opposed to the primaries, I made this a little bit more bomb-proof, pun partially intended, but this should be a bit more resilient to the very austere conditions that it will be subjected to as opposed to the primaries. So applying material thickness in the right places can really pay dividends as time goes on, especially with something like this. So at this point, now that this manifold is completed, the only thing left for me to do is to box it and the original manifold, as well as the wastegates and the bits they sent me, box those things up, and get them sent back to Boostin so they can get this manifold on the car, do whatever other revisions are necessary for it and to the car, and get ready for TX2K, which will be upcoming in March, and I believe that will probably be their first event of the year. Don't quote me on that, but just applying some logic based upon past trends, I think that's probably going to be the first place this manifold will see duty at. But with all of that being said, that will be about the end of this one in this mini build series. So let's go ahead and wrap it up. So thank you guys, as always, for coming along on all these different journeys and all of these different adventures with me. I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to build a part like that, and for all of the crazy projects that you guys have seen on the channel, I couldn't be more thankful and couldn't feel more privileged to be entrusted with bringing those ideas and those projects to reality. It's very cool. It's something that I don't think will ever get old, and I love seeing the success that people have with the parts that I've built with my own two hands and whatever broken thoughts are bouncing around in my mind. But now that this Red Demon Manifold project is a wrap, we will be back on the SC next. Next up for it is the cooling system, and I already have some parts and some things in motion for that. And you guys will see those things in the next episode. So we're drawing very quickly to a close on the SC project, or at least this stage and this iteration of it. And hopefully we get some warm weather and a little bit of rain to wash the salt off of the roads. So that way I can take the car out, do some driving, some street tuning, and most importantly, get some enjoyment out of it after a very long period of dormancy and this whole rebuild and rebirth process. We have some projects upcoming for the Mark IV, some new additions, some revisions, some revitalizations, if you will, for it to get it prepared for this upcoming race season. And then most importantly, and what I'm most excited about, I would like to finally get started on the Aristo project, or at least really get started. I know we've put the car on coilovers, done a brake job and some basic maintenance, but in my mind that doesn't really constitute the beginning of a build. That's more or less just maintenance and some tinkering and playing around. But I have some big plans for this thing, some really cool ideas, and we will cross those bridges when we come to them. I can't wait to show you guys what I have in mind and what I have planned for it. And I especially can't wait to put those things into practice and start putting that car together. It should be my best build yet, I'm hoping at least. And it's by far the one that I'm the most excited for. But with all of those things being said and my rambling aside, that'll be the end of this one. So as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, check out the website for Manifolds for merch for all things good that way, including my new MCB collection. I currently have hoodies, sweaters, jackets, and shoes available, and I know I say this week after week, but I do have more items coming in the very near future. Probably in the next video, I'll go over some of the new offerings, and be sure to check those out in the MCB collection, link in the description below. If any of those items do speak to you, please feel free to pick them up. And if not, well, then hopefully something that I offer in the MCB collection or upcoming collections do speak to you, and they are things that you would like to add to your collection. But with all of that being said, that will be the end of this episode and this build series, and I will see you guys in the next one.